It's mid-September on my Zone 3 flower farm, and thankfully the frost has stayed away, so I have lots of things to show you. Alright, so we're going to start here at the raised beds. So it looks a lot different. If you saw our August garden tour, this is all pretty much completely changed. The tomatoes are ripe, the marigolds are up, and everything has kind of exploded. Now over here, I've actually started saving seeds. So this was a lettuce plant and it kind of looks like a little bit of a dandelion. But if you rub this part together, you have seeds for next year. So I've already saved a bunch, but I just like throwing them in and I like getting volunteers. That's just how I roll. These ground cherries have been wonderful. I know I showed you about them last time, but we've harvested at least 4 cups from them. The kids love them. They keep on snacking on them. You can tell we eat them a lot because I'm having a hard time finding a ripe one. Ooh, this one's really big. This is probably like one of the best ones I've grown. But anyway, they taste like pineapple. I highly recommend getting them. So over here in the West Coast Seeds bed, we are still going pretty strong. Even though I planted this status like much too close together, it really hasn't impacted stem length at all. And all the stems that have been coming out have been perfectly usable for bouquets, nice and long. One thing that's been a little frustrating is even though I planted so many more straw flowers than I did last year, it just seems like it's never enough. Every time I go to pick them, I always think, oh, do I need this more for subscribers, for weddings, or for drying? And it's always like that internal fight. So next year, 3 times as many straw flowers. These cosmos are just gorgeous. The stems are a little bit shorter now that we have the shorter day lengths, but still really beautiful. Over here, I find myself picking very aggressively from this amaranth. I wish I had started more, but I was under the impression that amaranth would self-seed. Apparently my soil is too terrible for amaranth and it would not self-seed, so I don't have very much, but what I do have, I love. There have also been a few surprises for stuff that's new to me. So for example, over here, we have these forget-me-nots. And these are just really short second growths that happened off of the main one, which I really wasn't expecting. Now they're not very usable for bouquets, but if I do pumpkin arrangements and they're still kicking around, they'll be fantastic. I've also saved seeds from my Nigella. This is like such an easy one to seed save. So you'll get a seed pod like this. It's quite dried out. And then all you have to do is dump the seed pod. And there you go. You have Nigella seeds for next year. So I'm going to do the same thing. I've already saved a bunch just normally and put them aside, but I like my volunteers. Over here is obviously the sunflower bed, and I definitely have some overachievers. The crazy thing was I already cut this insane sunflower and it just keeps sending up more, but if I want to cut up anything, I pretty much need to step up here. And even then, it's like a bit of a stretch to get the tallest ones. So it's not very sophisticated, but this is how I save my seeds. I don't know why I started using paper plates, but it's sort of nice because, you know, you've got the airflow, you can just write on them, and you can also use them again year after year. And so as I'm going through the garden, I'll collect my seeds and then they just stay out on these paper plates to dry. They dry really well because obviously this room is dry, it gets quite hot, so any moisture is going out. And then as they're dry enough, I just put them in little bags with little labels, and away we go. Probably my favorite seed has got to be these starflower seeds. You just basically wait until your starflowers are dry and then you just pick the seeds off. And it couldn't be any more simple, and they just look so cool. So the tomatoes are still growing strong, and because it hasn't frozen yet, I have left them out here. Now you'll notice on some of these I've been topping them really anything at this point in the season is not going to do much more growing, so it's totally fine to top them. And I use them in bouquets, so it's like a 2-for-1, I guess. We have picked a ton of tomatoes in here, and even though we've picked like lots, made lots of batches of sauce, there's still lots of ripe tomatoes. Now I might just come in and cut everything, even though it's green. They'll ripen indoors, and just in zone 3 you could just never be sure when the next surprise frost is. And I also don't want to get into a situation where the frost comes and it just happens to be on a day where I'm really busy, I lose the daylight, I've got to put the kids to bed, and then I lose all my tomatoes. So in our case, it's just better to be proactive about it. Pick the tomatoes, even if they're green, it's all gonna be fine. This tomato right here is the green zebra, and it's really cool because it has this yellow outside with the green flecking. And when you cut it inside, it's still perfectly green, but it's quite tasty. And even though it might not look ripe, you can tell from how easy it was to pick it off that this is definitely ready. So over here is probably one of my favorite heirloom varieties of tomato. This is the Amana Orange. It tastes, you know, pretty good for someone who doesn't like tomatoes, and you get quite big fruit on it. We actually had one tomato that was over 700 grams. If you're interested in videos about my tomatoes or about making this greenhouse, you can check out this video, and I talk all about the different types of tomatoes we grow, what they look like, and how the hermit created this greenhouse. Over here in the pepper patch, things are looking really nice too. This particular plant has been quite productive. Now, if you're new to gardening in zone 3, you can of course pick your peppers when they are this red, but you can also pick your peppers when they're even at this stage. It's fine. They'll ripen indoors, no problem, or you can just eat them like this and they won't be quite as hot. So over in this section is the least successful part of the greenhouse. These are watermelon plants that are clearly not going to get any watermelons on them, but I wanted them to live, so I just didn't have the heart. This is my loofah sponge plant, which clearly is going to do nothing. I have a post about how to grow loofah, and the first year I did it, I grew them indoors mostly and was the most successful, and I still haven't been able to figure it out outdoors for zone 3. We're just really, really cold for this plant, so will I succeed eventually? Who knows? Welcome to the flower farm portion, and even though it's September, we still have lots of things blooming here. Now this is my original succession of Snapdragons, and even though there's not a ton blooming right now, this will continue all the way up until probably middle to end of October, which will be great for my pumpkin sales. My glads are still blooming just every so often. Now, my customers actually liked them more than I thought they would, so I will probably grab a few more packages of these glads for next year, but I'm still not gonna go crazy. I don't remember what this flower is, but it has been a terrible disappointment. It's still not flowering. Like, was it ever supposed to flower? I don't remember. I've just started using it as a green because I was so annoyed. Speaking of seed saving, these are my very precious bells of Ireland that direct sowed themselves or self-seeded themselves from last year. I didn't even realize I had a plant out here of them. So I've refrained from cutting them, and I'm going to be saving as many seeds as possible because these obviously can hack it in my particular soil situation. For saving bells of Ireland, oh, prickles. You just grab the seeds from the middle of the bell and that's it. So again, I would like more volunteers. There you go. The dahlias have been maddeningly slow. So in this row, I have 89 plants, and I'm lucky if I harvest 3 a week. It's depressing. But I mean, they're coming, the frost is holding off, I have plans to cover, so I'm gonna see if I can keep them going as long as possible, and hopefully we get really good tuber production. So you're probably wondering what these little white bags, like on here I have, are for. And basically these bags, they keep out grasshoppers, they keep out thrips to some extent, and they keep out the lygus bugs. So they're not 100% foolproof, but I've definitely found they help in having better dahlias. So down here is my Sweet William patch, and I thought I had completely botched this crop, but they seem to be blooming now as we turn into fall. They're actually quite nice, and look at this one. Isn't that strange how it has like all the colors on it? This is also my last year of trying carnations. I've grown them for the last 3 years and I'm just not impressed, so they're cut. Another thing that's cut from my garden is this Salvia. It's a beautiful plant. This is a beautiful this is a beautiful color, but they just don't provide much of a wow factor in arrangements, and even for dried, again, they're just not going to have that pop that I need. And for, you know, the price I'd have to charge per stem for them compared to how much they contribute to the overall arrangement, it's also a no. So over here in the Feverfew patch, I had a little bit of a surprise. Most of my Feverfew this year had really short stems and it wasn't super usable, but we have this second flush of offshoots that have fantastically usable stems. So very excited about that, and if you purchase a bouquet from me, you might get one of these lovely little stems in yours. In this garden, there will always be status. This status has performed over and over and over again. I've cut from it so much. The stem length has been incredible, basically the whole season. I can't complain, but I need a whole row of it because between dried stuff and just what I need for my regular bouquets, it just wasn't enough this year. My eucalyptus is still holding up pretty well. I've cut about half of it for weddings and I'm saving the other bit for my last wedding, and then if there's anything left, it might show up in pumpkins. Frosted explosion grass over here. This has been there for me the entire summer. It just keeps coming back. It's gorgeous. Subscribers love it. It's always going to be in my stuff. One thing I plant that not a lot of other people plant for their cut flower gardens is garden huckleberries. I discovered these quite by accident a couple of years ago, and these have been a staple ever since. They don't taste particularly good just as is. I'm sure they taste better with sugar, but they're just a really nice surprise in bouquets, and I'm trying to save the rest of these for my pumpkin arrangements. So over here in the basil patch, this has been largely a disappointment. The stem length is just not there for me, which might be due to my poor soil. Thankfully, we've been using most of these for drying, so these smaller ones here dry quite nicely. I've basically picked almost every stem that could be used from these, and I use them very heavily. I really like this Emerald Towers basil. The only thing is I just got the seeds a bit too late in the season, so I'm thinking that's why there's not decent stem length, but I could see these working out really, really well in bouquets if I start them earlier. And I think they would be great in pots. So this year I'm just gonna cut it all and dry it and just use it in my cooking. But next year, I've already ordered my seeds. I'm very excited about this one. All right, so over in this bed was a bit of an experiment. I had another type of flower. It was done, pulled it out, and then I planted some Nigella in its place, not knowing if it would actually bloom or not in time. But as you can see, they're blooming now. They're beautiful. The stem length is actually pretty decent, and I've actually started using them in bouquets. Successions are such a crapshoot here in zone 3, so whenever I can actually manage to get a succession on something, it just feels like such a victory. Okay, so over here is my second succession of Snapdragons. I started doing this 2 years ago and it seems to be working out, and again, these will also last until October, but it's been really nice because the other succession you saw, there's not a lot of blooms, and these are just starting to come, and I've already cut quite a bit for my subscribers from these and use them in weddings and stuff, so it's really worked out for me. This succession of Asters was actually a bit of an accident. They're from West Coast Seeds and we got them in our brand ambassador package, but it was like a little bit on the late side to be starting Asters, and I just thought, you know what, I want to start them anyway. And I'm so glad I did. These ones are so much healthier. I don't know if it's because of West Coast Seeds seed variety or if it's because of the later start, but the stem length is just so incredible, so much better than my regular season Asters, and they don't seem to have the yellows, or at least not too bad yet, so these are a win. And finally, we're gonna chat about the Lizianthus. So I've already cut somewhat heavily from this patch, and you know, they did all right. They weren't fantastic, but I had some Lizianthus in a pot, and that pot got absolutely drenched on me by accident. So drenched that I didn't water it for like almost 2 weeks. And those Lizianthus got so much taller and look so much stronger than these ones. So now I know that they're just not getting enough water, and I'll have to do a bit better next year. But overall, I would say they were a success. Customers love them. Any brides that got them in their bouquets loved them. And I think we'll get plugs next year though. It's just a lot of commitment. So I showed you this in the last tour, the failure vegetable garden, but there's still a few successes in here that I did want to share. First of all, the carrots. There's not many of them, but well, I was gonna say what's here is really exciting, but apparently I need a shovel for these to take them out and show you. But you know, it looks like a carrot. I'm sure the rest of the carrot that's down there was fantastic. So welcome to the failure pumpkin patch. I planted so many pumpkins, we watered them, we fertilized them, but alas, our soil is just too poor in this area for them. They really didn't start like catching and taking off until maybe 2 weeks ago. And I mean, I know better. I know nothing is gonna produce, but my tender pumpkin heart was just like, I've gotta let them try. I don't know, but it was a good thing to let them try because we have 2 pumpkins. Yes, 2. Come and see. I believe this is one of the Blaze pumpkins. These were really popular last year. So yeah, look at, isn't it glorious? And then here is the second Blaze pumpkin. So clearly this Blaze pumpkin can handle some abuse. I got it from Johnny's Select Seed. Try it out. So since the garden, or at least the vegetable garden side of things, didn't work out, we're just having so many soil issues, we've actually decided we are going to scale back the vegetable garden significantly next year. Don't know if you've noticed or not, but we've been growing other things over the summer, and I just don't think we're gonna have as much time to give the vegetables the love and attention that they need. So what's gonna happen is basically up to here where I have the second succession of sunflowers, this is all going to be flowers, and vegetables are only gonna be grown in the few raised beds we have. And then over in the failure potato crop, we are just gonna put this all back to grass for now. Maybe someday in the future we will plant things and reopen it again, but just for now, it's just gonna be too much with 4 kids, 3 of whom will be under 4. So that is our garden in September. If you also live in zone 3 and want to try and extend your garden for as long as possible through the frost, you're definitely going to want to check out some resources I have below from you. I've written a book called The Frost-Proof Flower Garden, and it just shows you what kind of flowers can actually keep you in flowers all the way until Canadian Thanksgiving, approximately the middle of October. As well, we're reopening Backyard Business Cut Flowers Made Simple in October, so watch for that. I'll put the link in the description so you can check out that program, kind of know what it's about. And as always, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.